You're listening to the Lifestyle You podcast, where we help you achieve a realistic and human approach to health and fitness by working with your body, not against it. My name is Jenna Altman, and my mission is to help you, the active woman, find a healthy lifestyle that you can consistently show up for and make decisions that align with you and your body. In this episode, we are going to dive into how I've been working with my own body and not against it, and what that actually looks like in real life. This transformation takes time, patience, and support. When you are on board for the long haul, the journey becomes enjoyable. And this is one of the lessons that we are going to learn through this episode. Working against your body often looks like desperately needing that third cup of coffee, working out despite feeling constantly sore, and feeling hungry 24/7, or maybe not even feeling hungry at all. So some of the things we're going to dive into is, what does it mean when I say working with your body? How do I do this in my own life, and how can you do the same? Can't wait to dive in with you guys. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment just for a quick disclaimer. I've actually held off from sharing this story because I feel like when we talk about supplementation, or we talk about things that we're doing as coaches in our own journeys, sometimes that can be perceived as what you need to be doing. And I just want you to know that this is not what you should be doing. I'm sharing this story because I want to share with you what I've been working on and how I've been working with listening to my body and trying to tune into what it's telling me. But that doesn't mean that you need to jump all in and dive into this stuff on your own right now. I just wanted to give you some space for some new ways of thinking and to identify how you can start to work with your body. Okay? So diving into today's episode, I want to just start with some of the things that I was going through. And there is a whole episode on this if you want to dive into my background. So episode number 5 of the Lifestyle You podcast is where you can find my story. And this is going to be a little bit more in-depth version there. But I want to tune into really my experience with under eating and over exercising and living in this constant state of stress, because this is what actually got me to where I am now and why I am dealing with some of the issues that I have now. So just to paint a quick little picture for you. So for years, I basically ignored my hunger. I told my body that I just needed to drink more water. I also ignored my soreness. I told myself that I wasn't working hard enough in the gym. I ignored my lack of energy. I told myself I needed more coffee, even if that meant 5 cups. And I ignored my anxious thoughts, just told myself that everybody has their own issues that they're dealing with. I also, one of the biggest things that I remember is ignoring my stress. And really what I would tell myself is, well, my stress isn't impacting me because I'm not having panic attacks, right? That's like a very visible sign of stress and an emotional breakdown, right? Is that sign of a panic attack. I've never had one of those. And so I just kept saying to myself, well, I'm always stressed and that's just part of who I am, but I'm not seeing any impacts from that. So it must mean that I'm fine. Okay. Now, when we are talking about stress, I cannot harp this enough, guys, but the manifestation of stress and the underlying impacts that it has on the body are crazy. There is tons of research to support this and how stress can play a role in nearly every issue that we have in our bodies and in our lives. And so we talk all the time at the Lifestyle You podcast about stress management and ways to take care of ourselves. And this is why. Because my personal experience has led me to struggling for years with some of these impacts of stress. And so I'm going to dive into what that has looked like for me recently and a little bit of a story about how I've been working with my body. So to sum everything up, there were things that I was dealing with that my body was communicating with me, and I started to note them as red flags. So a couple of those things were amenorrhea, which is a missing menstrual cycle, which eventually came back and turned into heavy and painful periods. And then toe fungus, which was something that I was dealing with on and off from pretty much my early 20s. And so got some treatments for that, basically a medication that I took that they told me that I can only take it for like 3 months at a time. Otherwise, it can start to affect your liver. Okay, so something like that. And then also had hand eczema. And the treatment that I received for that was a steroid cream. So I worked with lots of different doctors. So for the toe fungus, for the hand eczema, I went to a dermatologist. For the heavy and painful periods, I went to a gynecologist. Then I saw a primary care provider, and she actually referred me to an endocrinologist. So I've had my fair share of experiences. with lots of different practitioners and doctors. And really, I was coming to them with this point that I was trying to share was like, hey, I think that all of these things are related. Like, why do I have all of these strange things? Like, they have to be correlated. But as we often do in Western medicine, I got dismissed. And when I say I got dismissed, I just mean that they didn't dive into the root cause with me. They didn't share what could have been causing these issues. It was more so just prescribing me birth control, prescribing me steroid creams, prescribing me the toe fungus medication. And I was just extremely passionate about figuring out why it was there in the first place. I didn't want to have to recurringly take birth control for my period to come back and to have normal cycles. I didn't want to constantly have a steroid cream that I had to put on my hands. I wanted to know why these things were coming up in the first place. And doctors in Western medicine are trained to treat the problem. They're not really trained to identify the root cause. And so that led me down the big rabbit hole of like, okay, let me try this on my own. So I started trying lots of different dietary changes. That kind of looked like removing gluten, removing dairy, assuming that those were contributing to my eczema issues, as well as some of the cycle issues that I was having of painful and heavy periods. So I did that for a few years, and it was honestly just not great because I came from a disordered eating background and I was struggling with eliminating foods, feeling like I couldn't eat certain things, and I didn't want it to be forever. I just wanted it to be something that I could see if it was actually helping. And I could never identify if it actually was helping because my symptoms were so sporadic. So I couldn't really tell if that was the issue. Then fast forward to January of 2022, which was pretty recently, I was listening to a podcast with Dr. Jennifer Fugo, and she's a nutritionist who specializes in eczema cases and psoriasis and other skin issues. And on her podcast, she was sharing that she had an episode, and I'm pretty sure it was called like, why your dietary changes are not impacting your skin issues. And so I listened to that. And one of the things she shared is that like, actually guys, it might not be your diet. There might be underlying things going on that you're not aware of. And that like really sparked my mind. I was like, wow, okay, so there's something else deeper going on here. So I want to learn what this is about. Why do I have these skin issues? So I actually signed up for her course. It's called the Skin Rash Rebuild. I think she runs it a couple times a year. And this just like sparked my brain in so many different ways and allowed me to realize that there are other options for what I was going through. And so by the end of the course, I actually decided to work with one of their practitioners. Her name is Michelle. She is awesome. And so one of the first things that we did together was ordered a GI map and blood work. And a GI map is basically a stool test, but it's a little bit more comprehensive than a stool test that you would get at your gut doctors here. So on this stool test or this GI map, I realized that based on the results, I was struggling with a couple of things. Bacterial and fungal overgrowth, which actually makes tons of sense since I had toe fungus, and just general gut dysbiosis. So that meant that my body was not properly absorbing the nutrients. But the biggest two things that we noticed was there's also a low immune system response. So low secretory IgA was one of the readings that came up on my GI map. And it was so low, the recommended value I think was like 500 to like 1500. Mine was at like 200. It was extremely low. And what I learned about your secretory IgA response is that's your body's defense system. So consider it like the police. So the police come into your body, they're protecting, letting things in, letting things out, determining what should stay, what should go. And my body basically did not have that line of defense. And so therefore, I was having these skin issues because my body could not protect itself. My gut could not protect itself. And then with the blood work, we noticed a lot of nutrient deficiencies, which makes sense. I had a prior history of undereating, starving myself, things like that for extended period of time. So that kind of made sense as well. But now also the nutrients weren't getting absorbed, even though I ate a pretty well-balanced diet. So where I'm at now, so I've been working with her and I'm on my 4th protocol of supplementation. And I'm not going to share with you guys what supplements I'm taking because yours is going to be extremely unique to you and your case. So that is why I'm not sharing this. That's why I have the disclaimer in the beginning. But I'm not always a big fan of supplementation. It's something that I have been very reserved about because especially with clients, I'm never going to prescribe them or suggest that they're on supplements until we have a lot of the basics covered, right? We need to make sure we always take a food first approach at Harvest Coaching. So making sure that you are getting as many nutrients as you possibly can from your diet and then supplementing depending on some of those other issues that you're experiencing. So anyways, I've been on tons of supplements. It's been quite the ordeal. I have a pill kit. I have all the days spelled out, and I have basically supplements that go for the morning, lunch, and evening. So definitely taking a lot of supplements to help with some of these issues, as well as one of the biggest components is managing my stress, because stress is the direct correlation with why this has occurred in the first place. When we have extended periods of stress or chronic stress, that can often cause this lack of secretory IgA, which is what I have. And so for years, I was thinking that all this stress wasn't really manifesting in my health and in my fitness and in my body. But yes, it was for years, just kind of underlying, knocking my gut out and off balance. And that is why it's so important that I am now paying attention and monitoring my stress right now, because even there are times when I've had some minor flare-ups on my hands since I've been working with her. And there have been direct correlations between stress and the symptom. So I have a symptom tracker. And so I've had some flare-ups, some rashes that will start. And basically you'll see the stress levels are increased. And then about the next week later, I'll see a flare-up after that. And so all of this to say, right, this is kind of the things that I've been working on. I'm also making a couple of dietary changes. So definitely integrating more foods, which is awesome, because for a while I was a little bit like, well, I can't have dairy. Well, I can't have gluten. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's causing it. Maybe it's histamines. That's a whole ordeal if you're trying to go there. So I was panicked about like, well, what can I eat? Is there anything I can eat that will not cause this issue? And so for now, temporarily, I will be able to add gluten back in the future. But while my body is healing, it can just be a little bit inhibitory to the immune system response that's trying to rebuild. And so currently eliminating gluten and then eventually going to add that back in the future. Now, the next component of this that I've been working on is Dutch testing. So this is something I just did yesterday, and it's basically a dried urine test. And I also did the cortisol portion, which is a saliva test to see what your cortisol patterns look like throughout the day. So cortisol is your stress hormone. So basically we want to see that elevated in the morning and we want to see it tapering off throughout the day as you prepare for rest. So that is something that I've been testing to see how that kind of looks and how my hormones look, because eventually I would like to have a family and I want to make sure that things are in a good place for that, as well as diving into maybe why I have some of these heavy painful periods, right? Just making sure that everything's checking the box and that things look good. And so I share all of this because I want you to tune in to what your body is telling you. And so today's food for thought is no one knows your body better than you. If you suspect that there is an issue, if you suspect that there is something deeper, I want you to visit that, sit with that, take that somewhere, take that to someone, share your concerns. And the biggest component, especially if you're going to stick with the Western medicine system, is that you are making sure that you are advocating for your health and asking questions. I wouldn't have gotten to this point if I didn't advocate for myself, because every practitioner that I saw told me that I needed to get on birth control, told me that I needed to take antidepressants, told me that I needed to take care of my body by doing X medication. And it's just there. It's not the only solution. It works for some people. And it's not to say that this is anti-medicine or anything like that, but there are other options if you explore them, if you have the knowledge and the confidence to go in and advocate for yourself. And this is one of the things that I love working with clients with. So I am a nutrition coach, but I know a lot about some of these other things that might be going on. If you're not able to advocate for yourself or you need help advocating for yourself, this is exactly what I do with my clients. Like, hey, make sure you bring this up. Make sure you're asking this. Or I help them find practitioners that do a more holistic approach to things if you are looking for alternative ways to heal your body that do not involve medicine. And so with all of this said, no one knows your body better than you, and make sure that you are advocating for your own health and asking questions. And if you need support with this, this is exactly what we do at Harvest Coaching. So would love to hear from you guys. Keep me posted. Would love to know your thoughts on this episode. And I hope you enjoyed me sharing my story today. Thank you for listening to the Lifestyle You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating and review to help others discover the magic we're creating together. If there's someone in your life who could benefit from listening to this episode, be sure to forward it along to them. You can also follow me on Instagram at Jenna Ray Altman for more helpful content, resources, and good vibes. As always, thank you so much for being here.